chords, F minor 7, go to a B flat major chord in the right hand, but the left hand is pretty much staying on the F. Now, can anyone name a classic song that uses that same modulation up a minor third? If people out there were saying Upside Down by Diana Ross, you're absolutely right. Hi guys, Damien back again. If you recall, a few weeks ago I put up a reel on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube Shorts talking about my 5 favorite pop albums at the moment. Pop music is starting to get some real musicality back into it, which I'm all here for. I haven't been a huge fan of pop music for about 15 to 16 years because it's so dumbed down and doesn't have the staying power of stuff that I loved from the 50s through the early 00s. It's great to see artists like Olivia Rodrigo, Chappell Roan, and Sabrina Carpenter bringing back this sound and referencing bygone eras for inspiration. With Sabrina Carpenter, her new album that came out a couple or so weeks ago, A Man's Best Friend, it's a really good and varied listen. Each track goes in all sorts of directions as far as genre and the decade of inspiration. For example, the song we're going to work on today is Tears, which is the second track on the album. It has a great slice of disco in its sound, but it's still very modern sonically and lyrically. I'm going to show you a reference I picked up when I first heard the song. When I heard it for the first time, I immediately picked up what the song they were referencing was, and I'll show you when we get into the MP3 session. Before I do that, I'm going to show you the MIDI file because this is a good representation of knowing your limitations as far as the general MIDI standard is concerned. There's quite a few tracks where it starts with a particular sound, and a few bars later there'll be a sound that takes its place. For example, there's a couple of tracks where it starts with a harp glissando, and then a few bars later I change the sound from the harp to a clean guitar patch. This is the MIDI file for Tears. This is the first instance of what I was talking about before, choir R's / voice ooze. That means if you look at the start of the track, you've got choir R's. Most of the first half of the track up until the disco break, that's all choir R's. When we get up to bar 60, beat 1, division 1, etc., you'll see a program change to voice ooze, and then you'll see all the events after that. Another good example is this one, Celesta, Fantasia, flute. At the start of the song, there's a Celesta. Coming into each verse, there's a little Fantasia arpeggio with the Fantasia preset patch in the GM standard. And then the flute comes in and doubles the do-do-do-do-do's at the end. Then the harp and clean guitar, as I mentioned, same thing here, and everything else stays exactly as it is. Okay, so I'll take you into the MP3 session now. So what we've got here is quite a lot more tracks than on the MIDI file. With those tracks that have multiple sounds assigned, I've had to split them and put them on new software instrument tracks for their specific sounds. So what we're going to do is solo the piano track and the electric piano track as well. They're pretty much doing all the keyboard related foundational stuff for this song. I'm using the Grandeur library from Native Instruments, and I'm just using the crisp pop grand preset. Great percussive piano, really great library I can highly recommend. And this is the electric piano, and I'm just using the good old standard Mark I from Vintage Keys, and I'm using the Steel a Dame preset. As the name of the preset very cleverly implies, it's a nod to the Steely Dan sound that they used a lot in the 70s on the Rhodes, which was putting it through an amp and a phaser. So the two sounds together sound like this. Check what happens here. Modulates up to F minor. So if we just use the piano patch for the moment, I'm going to show you something. So the main chord progression in this song is G minor, 7, 9, 1, 7, D minor, 7, 9. So that's the main chord progression that goes through the whole song. And then once we transition to the verse, it goes hand is pretty much staying on the F. Now, can anyone name a classic song that uses that same modulation up a minor third? If people out there were saying Upside Down by Diana Ross, you're absolutely right. So if you remember the original song, it goes... up to B flat minor for the verse, and the same thing is happening in Tears. Another thing that really solidified the fact that they were referencing Upside Down in Tears was what happens at the end of the verse. It's a 16-bar verse, but the last bar of the verse is a little pickup bar which goes into the chorus, and it's only a 2/4 bar, meaning 2 beats of quarter notes. Now, we're going to the basses, the fingered bass and the synth bass. I'm using the Easy Bass library, which I've used before in other videos, but this time I'm using the Easy Bass Modern patch that comes with it, and the preset that's part of this library is Focused and Warm, and I'm combining that together with chameleon vibe bass from Omnisphere, which is one of my favorite plugins for any synth related stuff. You're going to see this plugin used quite a lot here. So if we solo these two guys and we'll play the chorus, it sounds like. In fact, just give me a quick second. Turn you off. Okay. So that's basically most of the time the two patches are doing the same thing during the song. Then we go to choir R's. Obviously in the MIDI file there's the vocal guides and harmonies guide, but they're not going to be used in the MP3 mixes. So we just go straight to choir R's voice ooze. And for this, I'm using the RealityVox Ladies library in Contact. I've used this plenty of times in the past for backing vocal harmonies. In this plugin, you can choose from quite a few different voices. I've set up some key switches here. This key is triggering two different articulations depending on what I'm doing. In the chorus, there's that aha part. The first chord I'm playing is triggering ah, and then the next chord I'm playing is triggering ha. This key switch is do, and this is da. Those two are going to be used in that disco break. If I play the chorus, this is what it sounds like. And if we go here, this is the disco break. All right, cool. So now this is the Celesta, Fantasia, and Flute track. The Celesta is just purely in the intro, and it sounds like this. I think it's the same sound that I reckon was used on the original, which is in Keyscape, a library you've seen me use a lot before. The name of the patch is Celesta Vintage Tremolo. That's what I'm using. Then we've got this Fantasia, the Fantasia preset in the GM sound set, a belly kind of patch. And I'm using it for the transitions into the verses, so I'll play you one of those. Right. Then we've got the flute, and I'm using the audio modeling flute. And as I've said before in other videos, I just absolutely love this plugin and all the other plugins from this manufacturer. So I'm using this to double up on the BVs in the disco break. Okay, so now harp, clean guitar left. This track is panned to the left speaker, and it starts with a harp glissando, which sounds like this. I'm going to use these two tracks, and I'm using the harp from the factory library of Contact. So there's two tracks here that are doing that, and it sounds like this. And pretty much that's the only time you're ever going to hear those harps in the song. So then we go to the first clean guitar track, I'm using the Stratosphere library from Orange Tree Samples, and I'm using the Chucker preset, which is like an auto wah preset where it's just constantly wah, 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 wah when you're hitting a note. I'll give you a little example of that. This is used in the verse. So we'll go down to clean guitar center. Center in the name of the track implies that it's panned to the center. So if there's any tracks in a MIDI file that I'm working on that say left, center, or right, it means they're panned to those particular parts of the stereo field. So this is what it sounds like. I'm using the Zephyr preset in Stratosphere, and I'm using this as the main guitar through the song. See the chorus. Okay, so that is that particular guitar, very much in the style of Nile Rodgers and Chic. If you don't know who Chic is, I'm sure you'd know Ah Freak Out and all those classic songs. So yes, that's very much in that vibe. Now we've got the clean guitar on the right-hand side, which is doing this. So this is happening in the verses as well. It sounds like this. That's pretty much all it's doing through the song, that little pattern. It happens during the verses, the rapped chorus, and then the disco break and final chorus. So now we go to bass and lead. So this particular GM patch is, as the name implies, it can be used as a bass or a lead. So in this case, I'm using it as a lead. For this, I'm using Groovy Rezo Moog. The Moog synthesizer was very well known back in the 70s and is still used a lot these days. This is happening through the choruses, and it sounds like this. Hold on, let's try. Let's go to here. That's pretty much all that's doing. It's a little call and response thing that's happening in the choruses. Now we get to whistle. So this is the only patch in the GM sound set that is close to sounding like a sine wave. That goes to show that you've really got to work with your limitations in the GM sound sets. I'm using the patch in Omnisphere from the Trillion bass plugin library called Genesis 2600 lead. And this is what it sounds like. It's doing a little figure in the second verse and in the rapped chorus that is also being played by the strings, and we'll get to that in a bit, but it sounds like this. So there's that, and then we've got the strings. I'm using the Session Strings Pro library, which I've used before. The string arrangement in this song is quite interesting because a lot of it is held notes with strong dynamic swells. I'm using the modulation wheel for that effect. Normally, I was using the expression controller in the MIDI file for this reason, but for this particular sound library, you can set it up to use the modulation wheel. So I had to go in and change all the expression controller events to modulation wheel events. I'm going to play you a little section here, which is leading up to where that synth lead line is. You'll hear the doubling with that. There's the portamento. And here's the strings with the synth lead. So finally, we have the dry funk kit, which is used for all of the drum kit stuff. A little taste. Right, I've got also the percussion library that I use in Superior Drummer 3. And this is a track with some hand claps. I'll play you all these tracks. A good place to show you everything that's going on is in the final chorus. That is Tears, everyone. So please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, buy the MIDI file and MP3 backing track files from Hit Tracks, and I'll see you in the next go round.